بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من فتنة القول اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من فتنة القول وفتنة العمل. رب اشرح لنا صدرنا ويسر لنا أمرنا واحلل عقدة من لساننا يفقهوا قولنا. أما بعد, welcome.
You just pluralize it out.
Yeah, of course, it's a pluralizer. We're here together. Welcome everyone to the 2025 UNSW MSA's or the MSA Take podcast. It's a pleasure for us to be here. It's a pleasure for us to have you as listeners, inshallah. For this first episode, we're going to be just running through some introductory questions, giving you guys a taste of who we are, what we're doing, and what this podcast is all about. Behind the camera, we've got
Ryan Khan,
brother Ryan,
the third
Khan,
of the lineage.
the third of the lineage.
Over here, we've got Ahmad Zaidat, former president, former slave, former president, and over here we have
Zach Yoga, our beloved
Zach,
brother
yeah.
in Islam, ARC delegate for the. Fortunately,
Fortunately,
I'd say.
because I'm
All right.
very old.
Ryan, whenever you're ready, start throwing some of those questions our way, inshallah.
Why are you guys here?
Okay, as in here or as in here as in.
Specifically in this podcast.
Do we get to answer however we want?
I don't know. I was here because Ryan couldn't find a second person in time.
I'm here because I've got difficulties letting go of the MSA. I think that's probably
How many years has it been now?
No, five is a reach. Realistically, like 4 by number, but I think it's more like 3. Like on
Three by salary hours.
by normal metrics. Like I think second year I was technically MSA, but I was extended short at the time, and we didn't have like any structure, so I just did nothing.
Yeah.
And it was a good time in my life.
It's a good time.
Alhamdulillah, a better time.
Are you guys enjoying uni?
No,
No.
not anymore.
Every time every giggle that comes out of you, my opinion is decreasing.
Can I ask
Alhamdulillah.
why?
I'm at uni 9 to 5 every day. That's it. There's no other answer for this.
To get like really real, I didn't take my university education seriously, and now I'm just regretting the consequences of my actions. I mean, no, like on a more serious note, I feel like I didn't lock in enough for enough of a duration. So now I'm just like struggling to stay afloat. But alhamdulillah, we'll get on top of it inshallah.
Same thing on my end. Peas don't get degrees.
Please
So,
do not get degrees.
my first year, absolutely, I did like a whole stuff and everything. I got 50% on most things, and now I'm suffering the consequences. The opportunities that I'm getting now are actually so much worse than the people who are actually trying.
100%,
So
yeah.
much worse.
Yeah.
So
You really can't kind of redo it. So I guess that's why it's important to continuously strive for excellence.
but I can say I am doing better.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to do better, inshallah.
What's the most ridiculous MSA memory you guys have?
I can't say the one that I want to say.
Can we pinpoint it by date and time to the listeners that would know?
By date and time to this, so we're
like
making an
event.
in-joke.
Yeah, because the brothers will know.
Some of the brothers.
The brothers that know will know.
So, was it 2 years ago?
It was
2 years ago,
2023, Cam?
2023 first term holiday.
Yeah.
There were records of assault and battery on specific races.
There was a brothers camp, and we'll leave it at that. There was a brothers camp.
Sure.
We'll leave it at
That was
that.
a brother's camp.
The recent fiasco with the camera sensor has got to be like pretty high up there. I don't think it's the highest, but it's pretty high up there. Like the just like being at my desk studying for like 2 hours and then receiving a message that says, "Take a look at this," and an image received, and I open the image and it's 5 fingerprints on the glass of the most important part of the camera. There had to have been a little bit.
Ooh, actually, I have one.
A little bit.
Last year's Grand Iftar, which, by the way, Grand Iftar, no, it's already happened at this point.
Yeah.
Okay,
By
so
the time you see
last
that,
year's Grand Iftar, me and actually Ryan were at the front, and we were just sitting out there because we had to run the front or whatever it is, we're getting ourselves. So we had got no food. We got no food. We got the dregs of rice from like a tray, and we had no spoon. So we ripped a paper plate and we started feeding each other with a ripped paper plate.
feeding each other is crazy.
There was no meat. It was just carbs. I remember that day because that was the day when I realized I have to fend for myself.
Like, what kind of topics are we going to be covering this term and on the rest of the year?
So this first term, at least, is probably going to be based mostly on personal identity. As a Muslim, on uni, on campus, and then as an adult, as we go through into our future, into our careers, what sort of things do we need to maintain in our Muslim identity that we need to, or what sort of things do we need to hold fast to, so then for the rest of our lives, we stay on the path, we stay on the path. So,
there's lots of facets to being a Muslim, of course, that aren't necessarily explored in a linear way, or you might not be fed them, if you study a Sharia class or if you rub elbows with enough Muslims. There are some things that really need to be reflected on. Ask yourself what kind of Muslim I am in certain aspects of my life, my mannerisms, who I am as a man, what I do in my spare time, my ambitions, my visions, the way I apply myself to my studies. These are all things that we're going to be discussing, inshallah, in this term and then moving forward as well.
The main role of this podcast, bar this specific episode, is to bring on guests who will have a very specific viewpoint or perspective or something they can offer that nobody in uni can offer them currently. And then we can translate that through us to the wider MSA and even uni community. So then the value of their knowledge, the value of their experience, the value of their understanding can then be given to them, to us, to the Muslims on campus, so that we can better develop ourselves based on that.
Yeah, and I guess that now we've begun talking about the vision of the MSA podcast. I had a very clear moment where I said I'm not going to take this role on the podcast unless it provides valid benefit. And I think that's the most important part of our vision for the podcast, is to provide as much benefit as we can that the average MSA individual wouldn't feel like they're getting from their usual outposts, and to expand your understanding of the Muslim community in Sydney, to expand your contacts, to expand your awareness of different organizations and different people doing all sorts of different things. A good question to also answer, I think, Zach, would be why do you think these topics are actually important? Why do you think this kind of approach is crucial for someone listening in? I think generally the focus here is that you may not have been prompted yourself or from outside sources to reflect on some of these things. And university, I've always believed, is a time of radical change. There is no time in your life where you'll have the kind of energy or effort or, like we said, time to truly dedicate yourself to a project and to see it flower and grow. And so for me anyway, this is the right time to be asking yourselves the heavy questions, to be asking yourself, who am I when I'm alone? Who am I when I'm with friends? What kind of person am I when I don't have a deadline? When I do have a deadline, how do I approach my religion when it comes to showing other people around me, Muslims or otherwise, whether I'm Muslim or not? These are all things that you should be asking yourself, and now is the time to ask them so that you can get onto that path of development as soon as possible. And I think I also want to stress that we're not necessarily here to provide perfect, clear answers all the time across the board. As much as we can, we'll be relying on the Quran and the Sunnah to set guideposts in the sand for these kinds of discussions. But at the same time, the purpose here isn't to just spoon feed you answers, and the topics that we pick will certainly be somewhat open-ended to encourage your own thought in your own free time.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of emotional maturity and the studies that have been done, it does spike dramatically, whether or not it be because of the way society or education is structured. Mm-hmm. It does spike dramatically in this range, 18 to 25, right? Whereas intellectual or intelligence, it's already spiked by the time you hit high school or late high school. And really, the decisions you make now at the start of, inshallah, your career or whatever it is you do for the next maybe 10 years of your life, they're definitely going to put you on a very strong trajectory. And although you can always change later on in life, in your 30s and your 40s, because Rasulullah, he only got revelation at 40. There's no better time to start heading on the right pathway than now.
There's hope for me yet.
There's hope for you yet, right? And, if these topics aren't discussed now, you're going to have to discuss them later. And if
Absolutely.
you're not going to discuss them later, there's not much we can do for you.
You going to pick up another question?
Yes. Is there a particular topic or maybe a particular guest that you think you'd really be excited to discuss on this podcast?
To be honest, I think in my mind, the approach to the podcast is very I want to bring in as many guests as I possibly can, right? So maybe I'm not necessarily excited for a single guest as I am excited to kind of bring in as many people as possible and get an idea of like, rather than just have one guest every month or whatever, have as many guests as we can back to back and see what different opinions they all have to say. Some people I'd like to bring on here, I think, and pick their brains. Not necessarily, these like big figures that might come to mind, because I don't think we've got that kind of reach. But some of the primary figures in our Muslim community that I look up to, I think I'd really love to have Ustad Mukhlis on the podcast, to be honest.
Revolutionized Arabic.
He's very much a role model for me. And I would love to see, kind of get into his head about it. I've been in his class for like a year and I've been trying to pick his brain all the time, but it just doesn't really give. I think he would be of significant benefit. And someone else that comes to mind is Brother Dean Masad. He's a complete powerhouse in the Muslim community. He's always pumping out projects. He's always working on something new. And I think if I'm going to really develop or advance beyond where I'm at now, then I would love to have him on so we can talk a little bit more about how he sets his visions, how he sets his goals, and all the rest of it.
I guess I'm excited more about the variety of viewpoints you can bring, right? Because we're not pushing a certain, I guess, aside from the fact that you should be Muslim and you should stay Muslim in uni, we're not pushing any specific perspective. We want to see as much as we can. We want to expose our community to as much as we can. I guess maybe one thing that I'm excited to talk about is, as addressing how Islam for us in our lives and as a system, how it differs from, the systems we live in currently, whether that be, individualism, like the full money-hungry capitalism that we're all, like everything we value is based on money now, right?
Yeah.
Islam explicitly is not about that. So I want to talk especially about how we come to terms with that sort of stuff, how we break free from the value systems of our society currently, and how we maintain ourselves in the value systems of Islam, right? Which is, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, family, friends, community, all these things that make Islam great, which might be hindered nowadays. Some people, Fraz Namani.
He would be great to bring on. He'd be really
good.
great to bring on, yeah. Love to have him on.
I know he's super busy and also he's always...
He can make time.
He can make time.
We'll
get him.
We'll get him. Yeah, I think it would be nice to discuss system of Islam and kind of just really dig into that. Understand. Let me ask you maybe one last question to kind of sum up this part before we get into something a little bit more conversational, which is, in one sentence, how would you want this podcast to benefit or change your listener or the Muslim community?
I guess for me, I just want to do at least one minimum thing. Because, podcast as a format is something you plug into your ear, you're doing chores or you're cooking or you're on the train. Absolutely. It's a passive intake, right? And that's assumedly what most people hearing this podcast will be doing. I want them to have the information get into their brain and just to think, right? Even if to reflect just on one question that is raised by our guest or by us, that's a success in my book, right? Because I've officially done something, or the podcast has officially done something that without it would not have happened. And that's a net positive.
Yeah, perfect. I think if I had to one-line it would just be to expand your thinking and your scope. That's the most important purpose of this podcast for us. And we hope that, inshallah, we can achieve even a fraction of that purpose in one episode. We think that this entire endeavor and all the editing time that has to go in behind it and everything that we had to do will be worth it, inshallah. Okay. Let's maybe wrap up with one or two more personal questions, just so I can get to know you, and you can get to know me, as if we don't already know each other, but also so that our audience can get to know the two of us, inshallah. What's maybe one lesson you've learned from being in the MSA? I know MSA has taught you many lessons, and
yes.
If I had to pick transformative experience, but just one lesson.
If I had to pick one of the hundreds and thousands of things that MSA has taught me about life, universe, death, and I don't know, the heat death of the universe as we know it, I would say that in terms of people, an organization of people, 95% of people will move if they are told to move. And you have to try your hardest to be the 5%, right? That's something I've actually always struggled with. I've always struggled with being proactive, right? Because just personally, I've always been content with the bare minimum, right? And that's something I actually despise, right?
Yeah.
I despise in other people, I despise in myself most of all. So if I can get myself, or slowly, alhamdulillah, slowly, I can say, I have been trying to get rid of that for myself. And MSA has helped, right? By forcing me to be in situations where I have to pick up the slack, or forcing myself to be in situations where no one else is going to do it. And that means I'm literally the only person who is available.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe that's a good thing sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like the MSA continues to teach me how far I have left to go and how little I've come, or like how far I've come on this journey is so little compared to how much more there is to cross. There's always someone outdoing you, and when you get
specifically those of an Asian diaspora.
I mean, you're right here. How are you? Like, there's always someone outdoing you, and to be honest, like at my ripe old head age,
out of what, 24?
Yeah, brother, I'm like 22.
You're 22?
Over.
Oh, he's finished.
You're finished.
Jokes aside, though, like now it's also gotten to a point where sometimes the brother that's outdoing me, or the person that's their output is 10 times larger than mine, is also younger than me, and I don't think that I would really be reflecting on myself and my journey and my vision and my ambition and my state of work and how hard I'm working and everything like that if I wasn't constantly being shown that, if I wasn't constantly being outdone. I'd never really have been in a position to do better for myself in that regard. And alhamdulillah, the MSA has really helped with that. But there's also so much more to go and so many more things to get better at and develop and strengthen and grow, so that we can kind of benefit from all the things or all the faculties that we've got. And maybe we'll close up and ask, if you could give one piece of advice to a new student joining university, let's not say MSA specific.
Yeah.
Maybe they're in MSA, maybe they're not. What advice would you give them and why? And would you tell them to join the MSA or not?
All right. Just to answer that second question.
Yeah, let's answer that second question first.
Sure. Join the MSA. If it doesn't work for you, then there's other avenues to engaging with the Muslim community.
Agreed. Absolutely.
There's
agreed.
hundreds actually.
Yeah.
Better than the MSA.
Definitely.
A little more questionable than the MSA. The MSA is not a bastion of pure Islam, right?
Yeah.
We're all just students trying our best.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm not saying.
I thought we were gonna.
We're not. There's no jahiliyyah here.
Yeah, of course.
But
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you there.
We're just trying our best, and in the way we can improve, alhamdulillah, right?
Yeah.
So join if you need, or join if you want. Try it out. Absolutely try it out.
Yeah, I think I'd second that advice. I'd say particularly, I guess he answered the question from a more like open perspective. I think particularly if you're having doubts, or if you're the kind of person that says to themselves, oh well, I have so many other places I could be at, or so many other places I could be learning at. I think the advice that I would posit to you as well is don't only think about what the MSA can do for you, but also ask yourself, what can I do for the MSA? What can I do for the Muslim community? There is bar none, no location or no place you can be where you can have the kind of staying power, the kind of leadership, the kind of capacity, the kind of resources to achieve what you want as fast as you can, except in MSA. There's no other organization that's going to hand you the reins. There's no other community that's going to put you at the top. The MSA really offers you a chance to, if you're of the right mindset, of the right headspace, you have that vision, you have that mindset, you have that goal, to truly get something done that can outlast you. And the MSA is one of few places where you can do that.
It's one of the few, I'd say, training grounds.
Absolutely.
In the best way possible, because one, the stakes are low, but two, the capacity is high, right? You could become a media mogul, right? You could learn photography, you could learn videography. You could learn how to speak dawah, do dawah to people you never thought you'd ever encounter in your life, right? You'd be able to talk to sheikhs or hear perspectives from people you would never have contacted otherwise, right? And that's really the main benefit of the MSA is if you're there and if you stick around, you can get a lot out of it with just a little bit of effort.
Yeah, a little bit of proactivity.
But my main piece of advice to literally anybody in uni would be that. Put that little bit of effort in, just a little bit extra. You don't have to be here 9 to 5 like some idiots, right? But it does pay off to do just that little bit extra, right? All these people in history who have ever been great, who have ever done anything, right? Malcolm X, Kobe Bryant, Caledon, Umar bin Khattab, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Our best example. They always put in that extra little bit, and they strived because of it, right? And the people around them strived because of it. And it's worth it in the end, right? I already mentioned, if I had put in just a little bit extra effort in my first year, my third year would have been way greater. And today, if I'm putting in a little bit of extra effort, who knows, in 5 years, maybe that comes back. And in 10 years, all of this will build up, and maybe I'll finally be happy with where I am.
Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make you happy with where you are, wherever you are.
I mean, and whom with.
And who with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you a righteous spouse. I think I'd second that advice, and I'd also add a different spin on it. For me personally, the advice that I would give myself if I could have gone back, or the advice that I would give anyone who's joining now, would be to challenge yourself constantly. Being proactive isn't just about putting in more input into the things that you already have to do, but it's also about looking at different places you can extend yourself in ways you've never been extended before. If I could go back and do university all over again, I would do all sorts of strange things that would probably not even be MSA related and might even seem questionable to some people. But I would really want to. What I mean by questionable is like random, like.
Well, I joined Nippon Sock.
Maybe, like,
Yeah,
as in,
like
for
you
example,
offer that.
honestly, like, I've got friends that like did university and their goal was kind of to extend in all sorts of different directions, and then they come out of university with their degree and their education and all the opportunities, whatever. Then he also comes out speaking Indonesian. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Like, why didn't I think of taking like a 6-month intensive in Indonesian, or like take a course in classical art history or whatever? The university forms for you a space of boundless exploration. And that sounds like it's come straight out of the UNSW handbook. It has not.
You should write for PR.
Maybe I should write for PR. Maybe I should write MSA PR so we can keep our numbers up. There's just so many things for you to try, so many things for you to do, and you won't have that kind of opportunity as you go further into life, as you accrue responsibilities, as the kind of pack that you carry comes to weigh more and more. You won't have that kind of time. And maybe some counter advice to that would be to remember that you're not necessarily invincible, and there's one last piece of advice I think is to remember that you're not necessarily invincible. There are many people that will assist you on your path to life and on university. So make use of these bonds as much as you can, the bonds of brotherhood and of sisterhood, if any of the sisters are watching. You form connections and relationships in university that will support you for years to come. And some of the people that have had the most impact on my life, I met either on campus or through someone that I already knew on campus. So bolster yourself on your journey with that kind of mindset and with that kind of ability. And yeah, I think that's pretty balanced advice. Would you say so?
I would say that's pretty invincible advice.
Alhamdulillah.
So,
all right, let's wrap it up here, inshallah. Next podcast episode, inshallah, you should be looking forward to hearing us discuss a little bit about masculinity, a little bit about what it means to be a man in today's context, and particularly in the Islamic context, inshallah. And with that in mind, we'll wrap up. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.